We are recording.
Hey, welcome back to Positively Jacked, where we dish real-time strategies on the nutrition, fitness, and wellness lifestyle trends to prioritize positive psychological habits and best practices. The goal of each episode is to relay helpful information on topics relating to health, nutrition, lifestyle, and habit formation. In addition, we give real-time strategy to anything and everyone that they can apply in the same day to help benefit themselves.
Yay! And we are here to talk about a very popular term nowadays, and that is boundaries. And we're going to be talking about whether boundaries serve as fences or bunkers. So order of our topics will be defining boundaries in a metaphorical sense and kind of how we can set up that definition to make the most sense for this conversation. We're going to talk about bunker and fence mentality and what those mean, what it means to rebuild a boundary if you discover that something is more insulating than it is helpful. And then some final thoughts and some actual experiences that you and I have shared with noticing boundaries and or fences in our own lives.
So let's just hard launch. When you hear the word boundaries, are we talking something you heard in therapy, or is it a medieval castle defense system?
I always like thinking of medieval castle defense systems, but I grew
Who
up with
doesn't on a Sunday?
and Lord of the Rings movies, so I always think of the hardcore boundaries. But no, when you think of boundaries, a lot of people use boundaries nowadays as that term as like a shield, right? If they're uncomfortable with something or if something gets challenged, they're like, that actually really pushes my boundaries. But I think the reason we're talking about this, and I don't really have to think, I know, is that we discussed how boundaries can serve almost too protective. They can insulate you. They can make it to where you are very resistant to change. And so why does that matter so much to mental and physical growth? Well, exactly that. Boundaries, they have a dual purpose. Yes, they do protect you, but they aren't meant to keep you completely closed off, which is a very slippery slope when it comes to something that you can utilize very quickly, right? Somebody says that that's pushing their boundaries. Not only does that make them feel a little bit empowered, but it also makes the person they're engaging with feel like they need to step back because nobody wants to push those boundaries too hard. But yeah, I think that it's really easy to fall into the differences between the fence and the bunker mentality.
So let's dig a little deeper into that definition. So for the purposes of this episode, how are we going to define fence?
Fence will be flexible, protective, but permeable. So it allows for movement and new input. And the reason we say it, like if you can imagine a garden, right? A garden protected by fences, you don't want critters getting in, but you also need to be able to see if your crop needs to expand and where you can expand safely.
So you're saying you could pull up that fence and start again?
Yeah, exactly. There's an organic flow to it, right? However big, small, narrow, where it needs to go, there's possibility.
Yeah. And so for the purposes of this discussion, we're going to call the opposite, the extreme, we're going to call that a bunker.
Mm-hmm.
And so a bunker is what?
Rigid, closed off, and isolating. No room for external feedback. So you're protected, but you also are blinded to most of what's outside of that shell.
So if you're from the Midwest, maybe thinking like tornado shelter, like
right.
Literal bunker, something underground, you're buried, you're not hearing or seeing anything that's going on around you.
Mm-hmm. And if you're not in the Midwest and you're somewhere, protective cave-like dwelling out in the middle of nowhere to where nothing is going to expand, and then the medieval wall thing pops into it too. So all of those are very effective boundary as bunkers. You had
So I think it's important to distinguish what good looks like, right? So we're not saying boundaries are bad.
No.
We're saying extremes are bad. So a good boundary would keep out the noise, but let in the signal.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. A bunker blocks both of those out.
Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is that a lot of people I don't believe most people set up their boundaries with the intent of isolating themselves necessarily. I think it's a very tough thing to do, to distinguish between, are you protecting yourself as like a threatened response and trying to preserve, or are you protecting yourself in order to continue to grow? It's a very fine line.
Well, and I think we see, in the fitness space, there's a lot of hashtag motivation beyond the cat poster where it's like, tune out the noise, get rid of the noise, block everything out. You won't be successful until you're so focused
Tunnel vision.
narrowly. Right. You have a tunnel vision on your goals. And while, to some extent that I get that, you can't have a lot of extraneous noise if you're singularly focused on a very large goal. Why doesn't that work?
I mean, several reasons, but the biggest thing that sticks out to me is that it's not really feasible. The world worlds, your life lifes. And if you set something up to be that rigid and that tunnel visioned, you're setting yourself up to where you can be derailed very quickly from things that you have chosen to ignore. So one of my favorites there is somebody who is all heart and willpower when it comes to their training. You're not going to get very far if you ignore your body's basic need for sleep, recovery, and food. Right. Yeah. So tunnel vision can only get you so far with willpower on that in that particular case. Friend groups. I think that's a really big one. Some people are very, very isolating, very compartmentalized with that friend group. And the second you try to socialize and stuff like that outside of that friend group, you're not really preparing yourself for what the outside world might have in store, differing opinions, right? Things that maybe make you critically think. And I think that's really what you risk losing with that tunnel mentality is your critical thinking skills kind of go out the window. Yeah.
I think that's resonant for the current moment for sure.
Right. So other real life examples, Jess brought in fitness and nutrition. So like if we wanted to do a little back and forth. So in nutrition, a fence could look like avoiding alcohol during training cycles, but allowing flexibility for special occasions and pre-planning for it. Right. So that'd be a fence because you're allowing yourself to see the possibilities. Whereas a bunker would be labeling all alcohol as quote unquote bad and creating negative feelings and negative connotation around it and very binary or black and white thinking, right? To where it's either an all or nothing approach, right? You're setting yourself up to where you are just insulated to believe one thing and one thing only, and that thing is alcohol is bad. So
then let's look at training. What could that look like in training? A good fence and bunker analogy.
Kind of went over it a little bit in our brief example was, a fence could be scheduling dedicated rest days. Because to expect your body to be able to go at high performance all the time is not feasible. So a fence would be scheduling rest days, but a bunker could be obsessively avoiding, out of fear, taking time off and losing progress. And one of my favorite real life examples to this is the active recovery day, where athletes think, I train 6 days a week, but then I have an active recovery day on the 7th. And I'm like, if top tier level athletes, like people who are performing at the tippy top in their sport and they have a rest day, you are lucky to find them standing. They are laying down, napping, minimizing screen time, eating the food. Like they are de-stressing on that day so hard. So some of the highest tiered athletes on an actual recovery day are some of the laziest people, but it's because they demand so much effort on their actual dedicated days.
I think people always find it surprising when one or both of us say that we don't consider planning workouts on vacation at the forefront of our priority.
Mm-hmm.
The same kind of concept of I am going on vacation. Movement is certainly a part of it, but I am not planning a 12-mile ruck on the beach if I'm going to Wilmington.
Right. Well, and you could plan something like that, but is that actually making it a vacation?
Exactly.
Are you going to feel rested from that vacation when you get back? Or are you going to feel the exact same as you felt needing that vacation, on the brink of burnout?
Yeah.
Relationships. This is a fun one with fences and bunkers because this actually is probably where most people have particular bunkers set up, not realizing it. So what would a fence look like with that?
Um, Healthy boundaries with friendships or outings or connection points, like, but maintaining those quality connections.
Hmm.
It's okay to say, "Hey, Nate, I worked a 12-hour day. I just want to be off screens,
Yeah.
but I'll touch base."
Hmm.
A bunker would be, "Hey, I worked 60 hours this week. I have no time to talk to you whatsoever."
Right. Yep.
And just making it a non-happen.
Right. I think a big one to point out here, because we're in the nutrition and fitness space also, is a fence in a relationship allows you to express healthy boundaries
Mhm.
and almost expect, or at least feel comfortable and trusting and safe requesting support. So we talked about the alcohol example for nutrition. What if that alcohol example extends to your social group? Letting your social group know, hey gang, I am actually not trying to drink right now because I'm in training season or a training block. And rather than avoiding social outings
Yep.
and not having a socialization time with that particular group because they might meet after drink or after work for drinks, it's you acknowledging to them, hey, I'm not drinking right now. I will still come hang out, but please, acknowledge and respect that I'm just not drinking right now. So I would prefer no shots, don't buy me a drink and stuff. Like I'll just maintain my own. Whereas a bunker, that person would never go out with that group of friends and for instance,
Oh, yeah.
to try to protect themselves, right? To quote unquote protect themselves from the temptation.
And we've seen that quite a bit, especially, coming from the CrossFit space. I think certain types of the year, people get real serious, and you start to see the kind of bunker behaviors come out when they weren't present all year.
Right.
So there definitely is that tie back to fear that I see.
Mhm.
And fear of loss of identity, I think, is a big part of this.
Yep.
So do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that you're hitting exactly where we're kind of going to is like, why would somebody default to a bunker mentality and not realize
Yeah.
it? And fear is one of the biggest motivators to protect yourself, which is not a bad thing, right? If you have a negative experience or you're worrisome and you have a lot on the line, then fear makes total sense that you would want to protect something. But sometimes fear, delusions of control, trauma response, shame, all these things can root you down to where you feel like you have to protect yourself extra hard.
Yeah.
And by doing that, you don't even want to allow the possibility of something that could even uproot you for something that you care about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think fear of failure or losing control, trauma response, like a lot of people don't realize, especially with in our industry, like people have horrible reactions and memories of coaches in the past, and that's one of their biggest worries about seeking out coaching in general. And then confirmation bias, like
Yeah.
people will believe what they want to believe. They'll Google and find things that insulate them even more. That bunker is going to get real reinforced if
Yep.
you're trying to aim for the answers that make you more comfortable.
Well, I think confirmation bias, makes you feel safe. I think if you're constantly looking at things that confirm your feelings already, like that keeps you even feeling more safe. So it's like that tunnel that never ends,
Right.
you know, and the more you collect knowledge, even if it is confirmation bias, it's I already know what's best for me. I know what's best for me. I'm safe right now. I know what's best for me.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so when your identity is tied to those boundaries
Hmm.
and you have success, changing them feels like losing a part of yourself.
Yep.
And it feels like everybody sees it or will see it.
Hmm.
And that's another big tie into, I think, those bunkers is that, and like real growth can't happen unless you kind of challenge that and unlearn things to learn new things. And that just can't happen in a bunker.
Right. I would go so far as to say that growth can't actually happen without a modicum of letting go of safety.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Like there is something to be said for feeling safe in your growth. And then there's something to be said about feeling totally safe. And I think they're just different enough that can separate people from understanding, like, are you insulating yourself because it feels safe, it feels familiar? Cool. Well, if you stay in too much familiarity for too long, that means you're not growing, you're not challenging certain things. And yeah, that does, require a little bit of, like, a previous self might have to, for lack of a better word, die or back off or evolve or however you want to say it, but it will be a change.
Yeah, it does feel like we're coming to that moment of die to self a little bit, which I think is a reoccurring theme for us.
Well, and that's actually what I was going to kind of take it to, was like, when it comes to boundaries and bunker mentality, like, I know we both have some pretty dense client experiences where people, or even experiences of our own.
Yeah. I've worked with a lot of coaches over the years, and especially when you're new into the fitness space, somebody's always going to have the way, right? The way. And when you're new, you're clinging to anything that starts to make you feel better. And so I've held on to ridiculous protocols or habits for far too long earlier in my journey because, like, well, I got to keep doing it. It's a little bit of bunker. It's a little bit of maybe OCD on my part of, like, well, if I drop it now and I stop doing this ridiculous warm up every time, what's going to happen to me?
Right.
If I stop thinking of bananas as the Snickers of fruit, what's going to happen? Am I just going to eat all the bananas? Like,
oh my gosh. I
am I
love that you brought
literally
that up.
going to
I know
be
exactly where that's coming from. I know exactly where that is coming from.
If I eat too many bananas, is somebody just gonna find me hoarding them in my pantry and there's just a brown rotting pile of mess? Like, is
Right.
my
And
freezer full of
you
the bananas I won't eat?
and you are clearly, stepping into such an unhealthy weight because of all the bananas you've eaten.
I
You just
know.
can't stop.
But it's true. There are quite a few of us who followed that advice for years. Can't eat bananas, it's like pure sugar, it's the sugary fruit. Like,
It's the idea. That's
I
what
know.
that's what I say about it.
Even saying it now, you're like, "What was wrong with you?"
I mean, you wanted results, and you wanted an answer that made sense, and you wanted an answer that, you know, it made sense to the point where, like, they always say, in order to achieve something you've never achieved, you have to do things you've never done. And
Yeah.
sometimes the things you've never done, no matter how silly they might sound,
Yeah.
are just the right thing you need to hear at that point to make a change.
Yeah.
Better
I
or worse.
mean, the guidance when we started CrossFit was like, everybody eats Whole30 all the time. And it was
Mhm.
like,
Paleo zone.
yep, yep, all the time. So never a white potato in this house, like,
Mm-mm.
which seems ridiculous now. Like, ugh.
Okay.
What's
We've
your,
moved
what,
beyond that
I
bunker.
know, I know, we have. Tell me about your story though. What about you?
Honestly, mine goes back to when everybody was starting with CrossFit and all the blogs came out.
Oh yeah.
Because when I grew up, I had a lot of end result focused coaches, and there were very rarely coaches who focused on, like, love with the process. And
Hmm.
so when I was into CrossFit, especially coming from, like, weightlifting and stuff like that, you looked at the programs that seemingly produced the most effective athletes, and that's why you did that program. You never
Hmm.
thought about if the journey, programming, the volume, intensity, and stuff like that matched you, or if it was designed for
Hmm.
you. You saw so and so from this camp is doing these things, this camp does this programming, and if I want to be like that person at that end goal, you follow that program.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so, but what you realize at that point is, oh, I'm not designed for this much volume. My training age, my training experience actually sets me up to be really bad for this style of training. Or maybe this
Yep.
blog is just a terrible blog and they got lucky with a genetic freak who didn't get injured in their flagship athlete program. And so it was very quickly realized after so many injuries and so many times of not eating enough, that really believing in those were not the best way to go.
Yeah, those early years were rough. There just wasn't a lot out there, and there weren't a ton of voices yet. So it was like, don't eat white potatoes, train big dog, Die in a 90-degree gym. Every workout should kill you, or you won't see progress.
Well, and you also had CrossFit alienate several subject matter experts at that time.
Yeah.
Like they straight up threw middle fingers and dropped F-bombs at whatever the Black Box Summit was. And you had people who were top of their field in Olympic lifting progression, gymnastics progression, endurance progression that got alienated from the space. And so our thing was, oh no, GPP and eat paleo zone and you're fine. That's how it's going to, it's like, no, progression is a thing and it should be utilized in a sport, but we thought we were smarter.
So I think that kind of brings us to the, healthy boundaries, good definition, right? So healthy boundaries are a mechanism that allow feedback and evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think if you're making that shift from the bunker, right, and you want to look for a fence mentality, right? What would you say are some of the top characteristics for that boundary to be more fence-like than bunker-like?
Oh yeah. So spotting healthy boundaries definitely would mean they protect your energy, but they don't isolate you. You can say no and stay open to feedback. And you feel challenged, but you're not imprisoned. Right. And we've talked to people about that even in the past few weeks. I've always trained with this much volume, but I'm injured and I'm worried about losing progress if I challenge my thinking and make a change.
Right. Yeah, no, I think if you go back to like the idea of like the programming and the training, it's really interesting because in my personal experience with that stuff, when I found a good coach and I had good training, you almost always felt like you had more left on the table. And you almost felt like that was a wrong thing because you were so used to emptying the tank. And so the challenge wasn't even the effort or the volume or the intensity. The challenge was not giving yourself like that extra push, that extra empty the tank moment. And lo and behold, it made me one of the fittest people I've ever been in my life. So yeah, it's, it's not at an absence of intensity or volume. If anything, it makes you value it more when it comes around.
Yeah. It's promoting long term, and the long term could even be a week. So if I go to the gym and I'm used to blowing myself out on a Monday to where I can't work out on Wednesday because I'm still sore, like what are we doing? Right? So and I think that was a hard lesson for me too, because I did all that comp programming for years because I wanted to be cool. And now, I mean, we all want to be cool, and I want to be seen as a serious person, especially when you've got a little kid. You're like, I'm still cool. Look at me, I'm still cool. But really creating better boundaries and more of a fence mindset around how we treat recovery, how we look at intensity, how we look at workouts during the week, not only in that span of time, but how we're going to look in 6, 9, 12, 50 years from now time. Like
how we look at nutrition.
Oh yeah.
Realizing that the Snickers of fruit, aka a banana, like has a place, especially if your training volume's high. Like there's a reason that after races, like a 10K half marathon, that they have boxes of bananas because carbs are important for recovery. And yeah, so I think a good thing to, I guess, end on when it comes to looking at fence versus bunker. If you have a boundary that you have not questioned in a long time, that's probably a bunker.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If you haven't challenged it.
Yeah.
You haven't challenged it.
I've always done it this way. Always is a long time.
Yeah.
For something not to change.
You've never tried something else? You've never considered maybe doing something different? Yeah. I mean, don't you want cool stories like Nate and I have about not eating white potatoes or bananas? Like challenge the boundary.
Yeah.
Challenge your thinking. Even just try something different to stay flexible on it. Stay nimble.
Side note, fun story. I have a nutrition client right now, Abby, who, when we first started working together, she had the exact same coffee sweetener and coffee and breakfast morning routine that she had since she was 18. She was 30 years old. 12 years, same exact coffee input, same exact breakfast, never once question it. And she went through, years of being an athlete, years of being a runner, years of going through med school, all this other stuff, still the exact same stuff. And as soon as we changed her breakfast routine, she was just like, oh my God, I've been missing out. So fun little side story there, but like, it's amazing how those things can go under the radar for so long and you not realize that they are preventing you from some version of growth.
Yeah. I think, some nostalgia is good. Not all nostalgia is good.
That's a good one. There you go. Another t-shirt idea. Okay. So we've talked about bunkers and AKA unhealthy boundary types of situations. And we've talked about fences, healthy boundaries. What happens if you find that boundary, realize that it hasn't been challenged, and you need to rebuild it?
Oh, I love this. Well, I think like we always say, start with first things first and start small.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Where are you feeling the most stuck? I think the likelihood is that the boundary, quote unquote, or the bunker that you're unwilling to adjust is what's keeping you stuck.
Right. And sometimes, not that we're biased towards this or anything, but sometimes it requires a trusted, objective outside source to help you kind of find that. Right. Confirmation bias is a thing. Like some of the fear, trauma, motivating reasons why this bunker might have been formed are completely, unknown to you. They just are because they are, and you've never really had to think about it. So it does require a little bit of external challenge sometimes to really, diagnose how long something might have been sticking around.
Yeah.
We had a really good example for this one because a lot of people love the terms cheat meals.
Oh, I hate it.
It's a cheat. And so if you allow yourself one quote unquote cheat meal per week, consider losing the label and maybe experimenting with a little more mindful indulgences. Because one, a cheat makes it seem like you're doing something naughty or nefarious or dirty. Like it seems like it's such a taboo. And I'm sorry, everybody, for anybody listening, crumble cookies are not taboo. Like that's a far thing to take, a little cookie. I mean, calorically dense, but
yeah. I mean, honestly though, we're in a hostile government takeover. Maybe if you're going to be naughty, actually do something worth being naughty for. Like
you're not wrong. You are.
What is that? But is the meme going around? Girls, stop looking at the scale. We're losing our rights.
Yeah, there you go. That's beautiful. Beautiful.
Maybe stop at the cheat meal.
Yeah, exactly. The cheat meal is the least of your worries. Another example on the fitness realm, gang, is like if you avoid rest days. I am on the point where I might only train 4 days a week on certain weeks now, just because of training experience, training age, stuff like that. So like some people are hell bent on that they need 5-6 days of training, 1 recovery day, and they haven't changed that in 10 to 15 years. And that's a big one.
I know so many people in the love them respectfully, objectively. You are in the overtraining category. Smidge. And when you're coming into the gym and you have to roll out parts of your body for 20 minutes before you can do another workout, like, consider your schedule, throw in more walks. What does that feel like? Throw in more rest days, throw in, I don't know, just less training.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there you go. That's the blanket statement. There is less training. And, obviously we can't go into all the specific like examples that we could, but if you're listening to this, and you're hearing us say less training and it makes you uneasy, congratulations. We helped you find a bunkered boundary, because less training does not necessarily mean that you are going to lose. And if your initial thought is that you're going to lose, then maybe that's the one we need to challenge. Go a little more.
Take us as proof. We both train less now than we ever have. And yeah, I'm not snatching as much weight as I used to, but I'm also just as strong. So
Right. I'm not lifting near what I've lifted in the past. I guarantee after a decent warm up, I could go power clean mid 2s, no problem. Just training experience and training age is a thing. It does not go away with 48 hours of extra recovery.
Yeah. Case in point, front squat PR on Friday for me.
Yeah. Case in point, I ran farther than I've ever run. on my own 2 feet last Wednesday. So PRs all day in our late 30s, 40s. Like, let's go.
I think people have to confront the reality that feeling beat up and sore is an addictive quality.
Yep, it is.
Yep. All right. So what we're coming away with, I think, as we reflect upon our own experiences, is that boundaries should evolve with you. And if they haven't, it's time to like confront that and update your blueprint. Because we're all working with a blueprint. We're all working with a set of tools and mindsets and behaviors. And we're constantly evolving that we should be.
Yeah. And realistically, there's something to be said that if you have a long-term goal performance-wise, there's going to be a form of rigidity around it. Sure. But if you think of it as a bunker, there's only so far you can expand. There's only so much you can challenge, right? My analogy there is like, getting put into solitary confinement. Yeah, you could do push-ups, sit-ups, all that other stuff, but it's not an open field to run. It's not external loading. Like, there's things on the outside of that bunker that create possibility because they challenge you. And so you gotta, try to remember that that's the idea with boundaries, is that they guide you in a direction, but they don't isolate you. They don't prevent you from moving or needing to improvise a little bit, because there is not necessarily a perfect path. We always talk about that. It's the pursuit of it, but it's almost always imperfect. And that's what makes it so unique to you.
So I think that's a good challenge for this week. We'll do it right along with you. But if you're listening this week, ask yourself, where am I growing? And where am I just surviving? Where have I created a bunker where there should be a fence? Where am I not having as much fun anymore? And there's the possibility to change things up. Boundaries should be breathable, not bulletproof. And the best boundaries come to protect your values, not your comfort zone.
Oh,
ooh.
It's like that perfect splash of water on the end.
I know. I'm good at that.
You really are.
It's the bananas.
It's the bananas. Ever since you got bananas, I became way more philosophical and eloquent. So, again, this week, where are you growing? Where are you surviving? Do you feel insulated? Are there certain things have changed that scare you? Challenge those a bit. We're going to be doing it too. I mean, we do it as often as we can. We kind of hold each other accountable to that, and we'll gladly hold you accountable too. Yeah. So, have a great week. Check out those boundaries, bunkers or fences. And as always, stay positively jacked.